Thank you. Welcome back to our council meeting on this 10th of February, excuse me, 2026. I need a motion to come back into open session. Councillor Bryant, Councillor Burgess, all those in favor, that's carried. Thank you. I'll start with roll call. I'm Mayor Shantz. I'm chairing the meeting. Councillor Schwindt.
Present.
Councillor Bryant.
Present.
Councillor Burgess.
Present.
Councillor Cadeau.
Present.
And Councillor Grant.
Present.
Thank you. The Township of Woolwich acknowledges with deep respect that the land we call home has existed since time immemorial, long before our communities were formed and long before we arrived here. Indigenous peoples have had a deep and lasting relationship with this land, caring for it, learning from it, and living alongside all it sustains. We are grateful to the First Peoples who have lived on and cared for this land and who continue to do so today. In particular, we recognize the Chinatan, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee people. We honor their deep connection to this land and we acknowledge their wisdom, resilience, and leadership. These communities have protected and cared for the land with respect, responsibility, and a sense of shared trust. As we move forward, we hope to build a future based on mutual respect, shared responsibility, and stronger relationships with one another. May we continue to learn together, to care for each other, and to honor all who share this place with us. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have no items to come forward from close, no public meetings, no delegations. We do have 4 consent items for approval. Does anyone want to remove them? Or moved by Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Bryant. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have no unfinished business and no council business. So we just have a bylaw listed on the agenda. If I can have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws. Councillor Bryant, Councillor Grant, all those in favor. And those are carried. And I think that was the fastest council meeting I've ever been at. A motion, do we need to adjourn? No. Okay, that concludes the council portion of the meeting. Now we'll go into committee and I'll turn it over to Councillor Schwindt to chair at the committee of the whole.
Thanks, Mayor Shantz, and good evening. We're now meeting as committee of the whole for items that require more debate and discussion. We will not be making final decisions on these items, but proposing recommendations for the next council meeting. If anyone in the community has feedback on these recommendations, we encourage you to reach out to staff or submit comments to council before a decision will be made at our next meeting.
Time's up.
Time's up. We're done? Okay. So starting with the first item on the agenda, the committee of the whole, we've got the Municipal Accommodation 2026 allocation of funding. And tonight we have Economic Development and Tourism Officer Curtis Wells here to present the staff recommendation. Curtis.
Good evening, Chair Schwindt and Council. I'm pleased to present to you the Municipal Accommodation Tax, otherwise known as MAT 2026 Annual Allocation of Funding. In 2025, Council approved $460,300 in MAT investments through the annual allocation of funding. In addition to that amount, the senior management team approved just over $15,000 and Council approved just over $26,000 through in-year requests. Overall, just over $375,000 was invested from the MAT Reserve Fund, and the difference was because a few projects didn't move forward. Staff have been collecting impact data and metrics from 2025 MAT recipients through reporting forms. Before reviewing the data, I want to note that these numbers are still preliminary. The final reporting deadline was January 31st, and several key projects are not yet reflected. Complete numbers can be shared with Council once all reporting is received. Improving data and metric collection is a priority for staff over the coming year. We will be working with industry partners to provide guidance on how to collect accurate data, how to report it, and how it can be used. This will support MAT reporting and also help tourism operators when applying for other grants and funding. Even with some data still outstanding, the results to date demonstrate strong impact. More than 49,000 visitors attended or participated in a MAT-supported program or project. More than 223 room nights were booked with a direct connection to MAT-supported initiatives, and more than $387,000 in visitor spending was generated with a direct connection to MAT-supported initiatives. All through the annual allocation of funding would apply to 2026 only and would not be ongoing commitments. There is one exception, which I will speak to on a later slide. Staff will continue to accept MAT funding requests throughout the year for new opportunities. Forecasted revenues referenced in the report are estimates and may vary depending on overnight stays, and there is currently just over $1 million remaining in the MAT reserve fund. When evaluating MAT funding requests, staff review each application individually and do not compare organizations against one another. Projects are evaluated based on partnership and collaboration, project alignments with MAT priorities, visitor impact, economic impact, innovation, measurement and reporting, and accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Using these criteria, staff bring forward recommendations that strategically reinvest revenues while balancing industry support, municipal priorities, and fiscal responsibility. New this year in the council package is a column showing the amount requested by each applicant alongside the staff recommendation listed under the 2026 MAT allocation of funding. The total amount requested by applicants was $620,000. If the full requested amount were approved, the MAT reserve fund would be reduced to approximately $469,000 before 2026 revenues. Staff are recommending a 2026 annual allocation of funding totaling $466,500. If approved, the MAT reserve fund would be approximately $620,000 before 2026 revenues. Staff carefully reviewed all requests and are proposing an allocation that is strategic and impactful while maintaining fiscal responsibility. On October 7th, 2025, Council received a formal request from the Village of St. Jacobs BIA for $210,000. That total includes $165,000 in one-time asks and $45,000 in core annual support. Staff are recommending $168,000, which is the 2026 annual allocation of funding. This meets approximately 80% of the Village of St. Jacobs BIA overall request. As part of this year's allocation, the Village of St. Jacobs BIA requested $45,000 in recurring annual MAT funding for street keeping maintenance and beautification. For reference, this total is included in the staff recommended annual allocation of funding. If approved, this amount would be considered annually through the allocation process. The BIA would still be required to present annual spending plans for these funds and comply with all reporting requirements under the MAT administration policy. The BIA could also submit additional project requests beyond this amount, similar to this year. This approach would allow the BIA to shift street keeping and beautification costs away from their operating levy, freeing up resources for administrative capacity needed to deliver on MAT projects. It would also provide greater year-to-year planning predictability. On October 7, 2025, Council received a formal request from the Elmira BIA for $38,000. Staff are recommending $30,000, which is built into the 2026 annual allocation of funding. This meets approximately 80% of the Elmira BIA overall request. In conclusion, staff have recommended a balanced and strategic allocation that supports tourism growth, delivers measurable impact, and maintains responsible stewardship of the MAT Reserve Fund. Thank you, Chair and Council, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Wells, for that report. One quick question I have to start. Have you reached out to all organizations submitting requests and they're aware of the staff recommendation?
Yes. Through the chair. Yeah, yes.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Chair Schwindt. Through you to Mr. Wells. It's the first paragraph, and it kind of bothers me, but Explore Waterloo Region receives 100% of Airbnb revenue. Was that negotiated? Because if we did, it wasn't very good negotiation tactics, I would say. Why is it 100%? Why aren't we getting any of that?
So through the chair, I can't comment on the history just because I'm unaware, so I would be providing an uneducated.
Mr. Brennan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair, to Councillor Cadeau's question. So by virtue of myself also sitting on the Regional Tourism Board, we've asked that question before, is there ability to break it out? Unfortunately, we haven't been successful working with the Airbnb organization to be able to break things out based on postal code and break things down well enough that we can do that split. Unfortunately, that's the best answer I can give you today is there's just the inability to break it down the way we can with respect to the hotels reporting and the ability to audit that type of revenue that they receive.
Any further questions? Councillor Cadeau?
Yeah, I'll just keep going all night if you let me. Thank you for all the work that you did on this report. I think that it's a fantastic report. I don't really disagree with any of the suggestions that you're making. I think that the 80% is appropriate, given the amount of requests that we're seeing. The one thing that caught me a little off guard was the ongoing request for the beautification in St. Jacobs. I'd say that all of the same logic that I heard would apply to Elmira, and the $38,000 that was requested from Elmira is for beautification. So I'm just wondering if we could either incorporate Elmira in an ongoing, even the $30,000 would be an annual item that they would have to report on, or Jacobs one out for this year, and maybe we can revisit that next year. That's kind of where my mind goes with this. So I'm interested in council's thoughts.
So just to clarify, Mr. Wells, I think both BIAs have requested money for beautification this year. The St. Jacobs one saying that's kind of making a placeholder for every year. You're saying, why doesn't Elmira treat as a placeholder as well? Okay, just so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I think through you, Mr. Chair, it probably benefits council if we talk about the fact that we had a request, and over the course of 2 meetings, we had a discussion with key representatives of the St. Jacobs BIA. One of the things that we were asked, that involved myself, Curtis, and also Councillor Schwindt. One of the challenges that they continued to push and pursue was the fact that they felt like they had insufficient admin support to be able to actually do the amount of events and initiatives that they needed to do. Curtis did a very good job of, again, trying to say that under our MAT policy, we want to make sure the money goes to where it should be in terms of actually the marketing and the actual events that happen. When we last met, though, they outlined 3 different options with respect that they wanted us to explore. One was the original request, which was, can we not change our policy and look at also providing funding for admin support for each and every type of event? We are still reluctant to do that because I think that will still dwindle down the amount of money that we have to spend on real work and initiatives. One of the other requests was that they be provided with, again, some level of core funding on a regular basis, with respect to support. The third option that they had also said was that, would there be an opportunity actually to recognize that some of the work that they do now as part of their regular budget that they put forward actually contains elements with respect to initiatives that would qualify under MAT. So what I had suggested to them was, what about a hybrid between option 2 and number 3? So if we could divert some money out of the operating budget that would qualify for MAT funding and fund it under that basis, then we could still keep the integrity of our policy intact, but still ultimately then align the funding that we're providing with MAT, truly MAT-related initiatives. And that worked for the St. Jacobs BIA because what that allows now in terms of their part-time staff person is the ability to have more operational hours to be able to invest in the events that they want to use this MAT funding for. you know, certainly I understand the interest, you know, in looking at the Elmira BIA and being fair. My only comment would be, you know, over the years and you know, just the way things have evolved with respect to both Elmira downtown and the village. I mean, certainly I think we need to recognize that St. Jacobs does serve a direct tourism need. Not to say that there aren't tourists that are coming to Elmira, but, you know, gone are the days when I was a kid and Brock's Old Town Village was very popular and it was much more of a tourist town. I think, you know, I think we need to recognize that a lot of the BIA businesses right now support a community-based need and interest. Again, that's not to say that you couldn't look at ways in which you wanted to be consistent. I think that's, you know, your point on all of this, Councillor Cadeau. But at the end of the day, I did want to just make sure that you had that background in terms of why we were being pushed on the admin cost and how we came up with, I think, a creative solution that was a win-win ultimately for the BIA, but still keeps our policy intact. So with that, I also would just recognize that it's council's decision to make.
Excuse me, I appreciate that context. It makes a lot of sense. I didn't realize the level of time that went into this decision. I'll add that the Elmira BIA is absolutely thrilled with the result of this report. So more than happy to move the recommendations. I think, though, in subsequent years, that consistency would be appreciated, even if it's coming back to the Elmira BIA or maybe addressing both BIAs and you know, suggesting that they come up with annual expenses that they would want to see covered, something to that effect. So I will, excuse me, move the recommendations, though.
I think we'll delay that until we've had our delegation, and Mayor Shantz, I think, went in.
Thank you. I do have a question on the Mennonite story bus, and I'm wondering how you came to the conclusion. You talked about doing 80% on a number of them. Can you explain a little bit your thinking on that one?
Sure, through the chair. So when we evaluate each request, as mentioned before, it's all on an independent basis. So we look at them individually and then just, rank them on the criteria based on the partnerships, collaboration, measurement, visitor impact, economic impact, upon a few others. And then we looked at that, and that's where we come to a total with the significant request of $85,000 for the bus. We see that as a value, and that's why $25,000 is one of the higher amounts that we put forward. But at the same time, we want to ensure that the MAT is not supporting any projects to the point where it is reliant on MAT to go forward. And so that's why we had come up with a $25,000 proposal as a recommendation for the project, so that we're still putting, I think it works out to about 35 or 40% of the actual request, and it helps to bring the project forward with significant contribution while not covering the full project.
So I can say that the Mennonite story, I can say that the Mennonite story is a not-for-profit and charitable, and because I sit on the board, has you know, very little cash in terms of reserves. So I'm not sure if 25,000 is enough to allow them to purchase it, but I see Almeda kind of raising her eyebrow. I'm not sure I'm allowed to ask you at this point. But
Is there an unregistered delegation? Is that what you're saying, Mayor Shantz?
perhaps, yes. Yes, I think there may be.
I do that one until after our registered delegation.
Yes, that's a good idea. But sorry, I'm not.
Mr. Wells?
Sorry, through the chair, just to add as well, in discussions with Almeda, we had talked about kind of and as I talk to all applicants, is we always say put your best put forward in terms of your request. And then staff will go through their criteria and put that recommendation forward, and then council can look at that recommendation and either agree with it or increase or decrease. But in talking to Almeda, we had talked about if we were able to put some funds towards it with a partnership between the Wagon tours as well as Mennonite Story, that there might be the potential to still be able to close the gap in terms of what wasn't being funded by the grants.
Okay, not seeing any further questions right now. If we move on to our registered delegation, there are instructions as usual in a meeting, so please keep in mind the time limit posted on the agenda. There will be a timer on the screen, and you'll hear a warning sound when you have 1 minute left. Once you're finished, council may have some questions and clarification for you. This is not time for back and forth discussion with council, but a chance for council to clarify comments. After that, please return to your seat, and you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting or leave at a time when you wish. Once all delegations have spoken, we'll begin our discussion and debate. So tonight we have a delegation here to speak on the mat tax. The CEO of Three Sisters Cultural Center, Adrienne Carter, is here in person. I believe Artistic Director Jax Rula's in person as well. Perfect. Please come to the podium and you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. After listening to this conversation, it's encouraging to see the support that Matt can provide for our tourism operations. As many of you know, I am Adrienne Carter. I run the Three Sisters Cultural Center along with my sister, Jax Rula. And I'm very thankful for the Township's continued support of our efforts as we reinvigorate, reintroduce two very important iconic events in our community. One, of course, is what is in Curtis's report for the Kissing Bridge Art Tour. The other one is WEFFest, which is was the Quilt and Fiber Arts Festival. So it's now kind of entering its 25th year. So when we last spoke to Curtis in the fall about a MAT application, we weren't really sure what was going to happen with WEFFest. And so we really focused our ask on the Kissing Bridge Art Tour. But since then, I am happy to report that the community stepped up and saved WEFFest. It was really on the line of not being able to happen again this year. But people like Almeda and the Mennonite Story, Lens Mills, they have sponsored the event again this year. And more importantly, we have entered into a really dynamic partnership with the Hampton Inn. And so this new partnership brings local programming directly to the hotel. And we are able to provide experiences to fill out room packages and hotel stays. And so for WEFFest, which is going to be held on the same weekend as the Elmira Maple Syrup Festival in April, WEFFest will have a Friday night wine night and a Sunday high tea, which are packaged in hotel offerings through the Hampton Inn. And if this partnership with this hotel is new, they want activities in their hotel, and we can provide those experiences. But in order for it to be sustainable, we need to be able to continue to offer quality programming. And unfortunately, our federal funding, which was very nice for the last 4 years, has come to an end. And so as much as I really appreciate Curtis's recommendation to support the Kissing Bridge Art Show, as much as I try, I cannot get the budget to balance with only $10,000, half of our ask. And so I have, now that we know what was happening with WEFFest, I have put in an ask for a special events grant from council for $5,000. And so tonight I come to council to propose that perhaps we could see the full funding of our original ask of $20,000 from the MAT fund, and we would put that towards both events, $15,000 to the Kissing Bridge Art Tour, which this year we're adding an element of a car show, again, in partnership with the Hampton Inn. It will be at the hotel. And then I would withdraw that request from the special events grant, because we would use the other $5,000 towards WEFFest, which is really what we need. We ask all the municipalities in the region to support that festival. Again, we will have the Quilt of Belonging at that festival, but as it is the same weekend as the Elmira Maple Syrup Festival, we anticipate a lot of people, and if we can coordinate some kind of shuttle service or moving people from Elmira to the village on that Saturday, that would be ideal. So, you know, we've been very successful as a cultural center in revitalizing these two very important events, and a good part of that is because of your support at the council, and so I hope that support will continue. And thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the delegate? Okay, thanks. So I guess that gives us, sorry.
Can I move to hear unregistered delegations? If Almeda, you have anything to add?
Is that the one, council? Seeing
Yeah.
none.
Thank you. Nice to be here, meet you all. Greetings to all the mayor and the council. I'm from the administrator of the Mennonite Story, and I own Elmira Wagon Rides. Almeda Weber is my name. And we're very closely collaborated, as Sandy knows. The two companies work together. And so the bus that we're wanting to purchase would be for smaller tours in the area, Mennonite country tours, and it would be funded by Elmira Wagon Rides. I just wanted to clarify that because of it's through the Mennonite Story, but because of Elmira Wagon Rides, it would be funded through that. So I don't know if that clears it up a little bit.
Thanks.
If there's any questions, just feel free to ask.
No, thank you, Almeda. That was helpful. And with that and what Curtis explained earlier, I think the what's allocated here will work. Yes.
What we're doing now is we hire a bus company for Sugar Bush tours in the area, and we're seeing that if we could purchase a bus or a van, 14-passenger van possibly, we could do. There's people requesting smaller tours, Mennonite tours in the area, and if we would have a smaller vehicle. I mean, by a smaller vehicle, we do bus tours like coaches. But if we would have a smaller bus, we could accommodate smaller groups. And we're getting more and more requests for that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll turn over to council now for any other questions or debate. We've got a recommended motion. We've got a request from a delegate. How would council like to proceed? Your shots?
We had a request from the delegate for a different amount here, so I guess just to ask council's, see where council wants to go with that. If I were to make a motion, I think I'm just looking here. I can't quite follow the lines across, but I think it was a request for 20,000 and an allocation of 10,000. So if I made a motion to give them the 20,000, would there be a seconder? Second by Council.
Second by Councillor Grant. Sounds like we've got a motion on the floor. Discussion. Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Chair. Through you to council. This is exactly the type of initiative that the MAT was designed for. And I think that the creativity and linking it to the Maple Syrup Festival is great. So that's what we ought to be doing, is empowering our community to generate interest in, residents or other people coming here. So definitely going to support adding it back in for the full amount.
Councillor Grant?
Thank you. Through you to the rest of council, as a motion for it to also be fully funded, I would just say, considering that when the initial ask came through, they were uncertain about the state of that event. Now that they have more information, I think it's reasonable to do the full funding for them.
And just to clarify the motion, the full funding is at $20,000 and it's for both events. Oh, okay.
If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chair, so I think the motion that Mayor Shantz moved is the original motion as it appears in the report, authorizing a transfer of $476,500, if Curtis and I are doing the math right, with full funding for the Three Sisters Cultural Center.
I think it should state somewhere that's for both two events.
We can do that for
That
both
make
events.
sense? The mover and the seconder.
Sorry, I was thinking the delegate mentioned that they would pull their special event request of 5,000 in that case as well. I don't know if we need that in the motion or not.
Like, I'm getting nods from the applicant. I'm hoping the staff can take that as direction or as part of it.
We will, thank you.
Further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That one's carried. So we have our BAT plans for the year. Thank you to the delegates. Thank you, Mr. Wells, for your work on this. And we will move on to 6.1.2, our Comprehensive Transportation and Mobility Plan Cover Report. And to present this, we have our planner, Jonathan Delicoli, who's here along with Kari Fellows from Egis Group, who I believe is on the screen. Yep, perfect. So Jonathan, do you want to start us off?
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Presentation. So tonight I'll be presenting you with sort of a cover presentation to supplement or give you a summary of the report. And it'll be followed by a presentation by our consultant, diving into more details on the plan itself. So the recommendation with the report is that Council, considering the report DS-02-2026, respecting the Comprehensive Transportation and Mobility Plan Cover Report, adopt the final Comprehensive Transportation and Mobility Plan in Attachment 1 to serve as a key guiding document in the development of the Township's transportation and mobility needs up to the planning horizon of 2051. So the recommendation before you today is to adopt the Comprehensive Transportation and Mobility Plan, or CTMP for short. It is attached to the agenda, and this document is for the purposes of providing staff a strategic guide to guide the township as it works to improve its transportation and mobility needs. In addition, the plan will also seek to inform future analysis and recommendations that will return to council when appropriate, as well as when costed and feasible. To note as well, the implementation of the plan will occur over time, often tied to street reconstructions, development opportunities, or capital planning, and will require further council reports for approval. So the plan was prepared as a result of the Housing Accelerator Fund. In our agreement with CMHC, we had 10 initiatives that we had to complete in order to achieve more housing. This project is directly tied to one of those 10 initiatives and is a required milestone that must be adopted in order to remain eligible for future funding installments under the HAF program. The plan also positions us to apply for additional funding in the future from different agencies, as we'll have a plan in place outlining potential improvements that we can make in the township. The CTMP also provides the township with a consistent framework for evaluating developments and infrastructure needs as the township grows. It will also support walking, cycling, transit, and road network management in both urban and rural contexts. And it will also strengthen the township's ability to advocate to both regional and provincial agencies, as well as for applying for funding. So at a high level, the plan focuses on improving safety for all network users while ensuring we responsibly plan for a future that focuses on better transportation. It also seeks to ensure that we maintain a balanced approach that focuses on everyone and all modes of transportation. And lastly, it seeks to ensure that we are building streets that can accommodate everyone, while keeping in mind that urban and rural contexts will see different results. So during the project, Egis Canada hosted with the township 2 open house events, as well as 2 focus group with stakeholders, 2 surveys, and they also provided numerous opportunities for engagement. The plan before you tonight incorporates the feedback received from the community, as well as stakeholders and from Indigenous consultation. Key feedback included desire to see improved public transit, road safety improvements, sidewalk and pedestrian improvements, cycling infrastructure, community connectivity, improved winter maintenance, improved transportation options for seniors, youth, and low income, as well as microtransit options and on-demand service. So next steps and use of the plan. Looking forward, the adoption of the plan will provide a framework for staff to evaluate transportation needs as well as examine future projects or initiatives. Some of these projects would later be presented to council with a more detailed feasibility analysis, as well as with costing and timing further consideration. While council is not approving any specific projects or funding, by adopting this plan, it will ensure consistent long-term planning while maintaining flexibility for councils to make context-specific decisions. And I'll now turn it over to Kari from Egis Canada.
Thanks, Jonathan. And good evening, everyone. All right. Hopefully my screen is visible.
Yep. We have you on.
Excellent.
We have you on the screen. We don't have your presentation on the screen.
Oh, okay. Let me try that again then.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. So as Jonathan mentioned, my colleagues at Egis and I worked together with Jonathan and his team to develop a plan for the township. I have a series of slides that steps through some of the details of the process and some of our findings and recommendations. As Jonathan mentioned, we set out to achieve a number of objectives, including looking at safety and accessibility, planning for future growth, addressing climate resilience and low carbon, and setting up for success in accommodating future transit. The process followed a series of steps where we reviewed available information and conducted some background analysis, and then undertook engagement with the public and stakeholders. Based on that input and our analysis, we developed a series of alternatives that would help the township meet the transportation and mobility needs into the future to 2051. Including developing some ways forward, which were then shared with the same public and stakeholders in engagement round number 2, after which a plan was developed. Some of the reasons a comprehensive plan are that it addresses mobility of vehicles and goods, and it also addresses mobility by active transportation modes, walking and cycling, and transit connectivity. And as mentioned, it looks forward to the year 2050, including forecasting demand until then. The study followed the process set out by the Municipal Class Environmental Assessment Act, which requires assessment and public consultation process when planning infrastructure improvements. So the process we followed, which is typical of transportation master planning, covers off a couple of the initial steps that are required to meet the requirements of the Act. And this flowchart lays out all of the details of meeting the municipal EA. So as a result of developing the plan, once adopted, these first two phases will have been satisfied. And then, as Jonathan mentioned, future detailed improvements require additional assessment and additional approvals. The transportation demand forecasting was based on population forecasts, and noting that for the 20 years of the forecasting period, about 152% of increase in traffic was anticipated. Breslaw is the main area where most of the growth is expected to occur. In addition, lots of growth is expected for Elmira, also growth in St. Jacobs. The population forecasts and a model of current transportation demand were used to forecast what will the traffic demands be in 2051. The network included both the roads operated by the region and the township's road network. So as this list indicates, there'll be several roads with fairly high traffic demand into 2051. The color coding gives you a gradation of the future traffic volume, so you can get an idea of where the heaviest demand will be. With that information, our team did analysis of intersections throughout the township to identify ones that we were expected to have operating problems into 2051. And the color coding again helps identify where the most significant problems would be expected if the current road and transportation network wasn't upgraded. So some of the key problems showed up at these intersections that are listed. In summing up that first stage of our process before sharing information with the public, several key issues were flagged. And this list as well indicates some of the feedback that occurred from the engagement. So some key themes, active transportation, and looking forward to supporting transit in the future, which were goals of the study. Looking at streets designs for the road network, potential for emerging mobility modes, including things like e-scooters, car sharing, and those types of options were considered. Management of parking, and then the need to maintain road infrastructure and, as mentioned earlier, ensure safety. So given everything that was found with the review of existing conditions and forecasting, guiding vision was developed through analyzing what types of approaches would be optimal for addressing the future needs of the township. And there were several key issues that were considered in the rating system. The do nothing alternative, we saw the maps with the red intersections and road sections, which indicated that there would be problems with that. Option 2 focused on making improvements to the road network, generally widening and making intersections larger. Option 3 focused on really improving transit and active transportation facilities while minimizing road network changes. And then option 4 was an integrated strategy, which drew from both option 2 and option 3 to come up with a suitable approach. And that was the favored strategy to go forward, the integrated strategy. Some of the reasons that were that it balanced the needs of different types of road users and balanced investment in different improvements. It would prepare the township to support changes in the future, new technologies and trends. It would be effective in addressing the expected issues that showed up as red on those maps, for example. It still supports the anticipated increases in population. Mixed modes of transportation is supportive of equity and accessibility, and it also supports environmental sustainability by keeping less carbon intensive modes of travel like transit and active transportation in the mix. So with the strategy, there were some recommended upgrades to road classifications. So there were a number of currently local roads that were recommended to be upgraded to collector roads, and collectors are the blue color coding in the network. And that helps the network to better support connections between the regional roads that carry the bulk of the traffic and the local connections that they're meant to connect to. Higher classifications come with different road design standards that accommodate additional traffic. There were also reviews in addition to the classification upgrades and improvements planned by the region in their own plans. Improvements to intersections. So looking at signal timings, looking at additional turning lanes at intersections to help better accommodate 2051 traffic. As the color coding here indicates, there's much more green than red. So there are lots of localized strategies at intersections that are recommended and that can help the whole system operate better. There were also identified extensions to Grand River Transit's network. So the red here and the pink dash here are proposed route extensions, which will help support the overall mobility system and would require, of course, coordination with the transit authority. A cycling network and improvements to the cycling network were also identified, partly stemming from the active transportation master plan that the township already had. And this was reviewed and resulting in the recommendation shown here. So in general, the dash lines show proposed improved facilities and new facilities. So additional connections would be beneficial. There was an evaluation done to assess the level of service or how well the bicycle network will actually serve cycling demand. And it showed that with those proposed improvements, the level of service could improve from level of service D, which is not ideal, to level of service C, which is a better level of service. There was a review of pedestrian facilities, including where sidewalks were provided and where there were gaps in any pedestrian connections. And a series of recommendations arose, including adding sidewalks and including putting sidewalks on both sides of the road where they're only on one side currently. So the pink dashed and the orange dash show some of those sidewalk infill recommendations. So as you can see on the map, there are lots of opportunities to fill in the sidewalk network better and better accommodate people walking to their destinations. And similarly to the cycling, the level of service with those improvements was evaluated. There were policies that were evaluated and recommended as part of the plan, including traffic calming, where it could be implemented, what measures might be suitable. Guidelines were provided for determining pedestrian and crossing improvements. Guidance was evaluated and provided related to parking management. And in addition, guidance was provided regarding a smart mobility strategy. So this matrix here is a summary of the short, medium, and longer term improvements that came out of the plan. They include road network projects, which is noted, collaborate with the region quite a bit because a lot of the improvements are on regional roads, incorporating active transportation facilities, and then some major projects for the region in the longer term. All of the active transportation opportunities that were I went over in the presentation. The work that can be done with Grand River Transit to expand service, optimize service, what can be done with development approvals and requirements to make better connections associated with new development, the studies that were mentioned, so the traffic calming and related studies, and then some of the new technologies that might evolve. So that is a quick overview of the study and some of the recommendations, and happy to answer questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Fellows and Mr. DeColi. I guess this has been a pretty in-depth report in our council package and in-depth presentation. Council questions of clarification or comments like to make? Councillor Cadeau?
Thanks, Chair. Through you to the consultant, Ms. Fellows. In slide 9, it mentions some problematic intersections. And it lists the intersection at Arthur Street South and Whippoorwill. I'm just wondering if that was identified as problematic before Region put in the no right turn on red or after. And I don't know exactly what that date was, but I know it was relatively recent, and I know that it drives me I will just leave it at that. Do you have any information on that?
I would have to investigate, but we can definitely take a look at that. So no right turn on red was implemented.
And I'll say anecdotally, it hasn't been successful, but that's just my personal opinion on that. I do have another question though, if I may. On slide 16, it identifies potential bike lanes. This has been a contentious issue in Elmira as of late, and I just wanted to ensure that we're not giving Region any fodder. But is there a potential bike lane projected down Arthur Street on this?
I think
Ms. Freed?
Jonathan may have
Yeah, I
the
can answer
latest.
that. So yeah, we did look at that specifically because we are proposing to remove the bike lane through the downtown Elmira area and add it at one of the side streets. So we're still encouraging bike lanes through the downtown, just not directly on Arthur Street. So it's not shown here either.
Mayor Shantz?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the report. There's a lot in there. I've got a couple of questions though. My first question is all the data in here your own, or is it collected from other sources?
It is definitely a combination of data available from the region, modeling that was prepared by our team, freshly collected data. So it was a a thorough investigation of available sources supplemented by additional data.
So most of the data on regional roads came from the region?
Yeah, they have available data, so they were definitely we used what was available from them.
Okay, thanks. I'm looking at the chart, and I'm sorry, I don't have the presentation, so I'm not sure if there was a slide on it, but in the report on page 48, there's a chart on thresholds and descriptions. It's table 4, and it talks about signalized intersections and wait time control delays. So it says free flow is less than 10 seconds and forced/breakdown flow is greater than 80 seconds for a signalized intersection. So one of the intersections that we've had a lot of controversy around is Listowel Road and Arthur Street. And I can say for certain that I have sat there for 2 minutes at the least, waiting to go through. So, and I can't find it now, but when I went through the report, I'm fairly certain that intersection was not labeled as an F. Can you give me a little more context?
We would have, yeah, so definitely time of day matters. So we would have analyzed commuter morning and afternoon peak hours. And I'm not sure, the time of day that you travel there, is that typically commuter times, or is that perhaps other times of day?
So that is typically commuter times, although I did note that there was one particular Sunday, I don't see it every Sunday, traffic was backed up about 3 blocks at noon on a Sunday, which wouldn't be a typical commuter time. So I guess my comment would be, how can I say this nicely? The accuracy of the regional data and the sort of when it was collected and how it's been used through your study.
Yeah, I'll take a closer look at that. Some things that can happen. I don't know how the problem you're describing, whether it's a long-term persistent problem, or whether things were working okay and then the issue appeared. But there are many things that can contribute to signals not operating well, and the analysis not necessarily capturing that. So appreciate the feedback, because exhaustively calibrating, there are often limitations to that. But I can dig back into the information we have and see if there's anything that may have changed there recently that may have contributed to a different result than what we were getting, and see what comes of that.
I think it's fair to say that we've had 2 recent public meetings on Arthur Street, the bypass, and Arthur Street to St. Jacobs, and the residents were pretty clear and emphatic that the regional data didn't correspond to what we're seeing in the community. Traffic times are traffic moves a lot slower, there's more wait times than what this report suggests or what the region was trying to suggest. Is that fair, Mayor Shantz?
Definitely.
Other comments?
Is it just that intersection? Sorry.
I'd argue from Sawmill Road into Elmira, call it First Street. Mr. Kelly Coley.
Through the chair, I guess just to emphasize Ms. Fellow's point, um, the, a lot of the data is from the region, and there is that variability. So it's like, it's very possible that the existing conditions were not perfectly captured through the analysis, because depending on when the region sampled the intersection movements, it's possible that wasn't captured. That's not to say there's not a problem, as I think most of us realize, but it's just not captured here.
Ms. Freeze?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, that this study didn't go out and capture our own data. They used the data that was existing to prepare the recommendations. So if we wanted to do a study that actually went out there and did counts, it would be a different type of study than this one. So this one is using the existing data that's out there to produce the results.
Mayor Schatz?
Thank you. Then if I can very clearly emphasize the word guide when you're working with this, because I think there's a few other pieces missing, and the two pieces that I saw very little of were buggies and farm equipment. And I did finally see a reference to them about 2/3 through the report, but you know, that's a really important piece of our community here. And you know, some of the back more buggies than they would cyclists. So I think that that's something really important to look at, even to the point of maybe identifying specific routes that are maybe buggy routes, if we can work with our horse and buggy community on that.
Other comments? There is a resolution recommended in the package. Before we get there, I do have a question of staff in terms of what this report actually means. We've gone through a lot of consultations with the region over many years on cycling routes in downtown Elmira, and the pitfalls of being bound by a report that we decide on today and may not be reality in 3 years' time. So how does staff weight the importance of meeting the letter of this report versus financial reality or buggies or farm vehicles?
Yeah, so as I briefly mentioned in my cover presentation, this report is primarily a guiding document. It's not it doesn't capture everything, and it's not an end-all. From this document, we're supposed to bring forward some of the recommendations, but it doesn't mean that we have to. Again, it's used as a guiding document for staff to be able to use as support when bringing forward projects, and it certainly does not limit us to only these projects. We will continue to look more broadly at other issues that come up, and we'll continue to address those as well.
Specific decisions for specific applications that would come forward or specific projects. And this plan also doesn't put any financial contribution to anything. So any future projects that we would be looking at, we would have to come back to council for a decision and a contribution, capital plan or capital budget contribution as well. So this is just to provide an overall guiding document and provide some information and assessment of what our existing levels are right now. And it is a snapshot at a point in time.
Mr. Poupet would like in.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Schwindt. So I think a couple things. It is important to understand that this also allows us to access any funding or grants that are available through provincial or federal means by having this document. So I think it's important for Woolwich Council to adopt something. It is a guideline. I just refer council back to the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. One of the mandates there is to review, in our case, reconstruction projects to look for accessibility with respect to sidewalk, But if we recall, it always comes back to council as a council decision. So there are staff recommendations. We look at the feasibility of things like that, of multimodal transportation and the like, and then we bring that forward to council, and council has its say then on whether to implement or not. So I think that's really what we're looking for, is a more guiding document that does open some doors to potential funding that may be available in the future.
I think a document that says consider this makes sense. A document says our policy is include this is scary from my point of view. So however we word that.
Just one more question that came to mind, and I apologize, I can't recall in what report I found it, but I thought that I had read something having to do with traffic calming measures. Would that have been something in this report, or is that something? I did see the speed humps, and that was of concern to me because, to Mayor Chance's point, our horse and buggy community. So how are we going to approach that? Are we still recommending the speed humps? Are we going to Mayor Chance's point, identify those routes and just make sure we never put them on there?
Yeah, through you, just to respond to that. So yeah, this is giving some suggestions for traffic calming, but we would have to, again, look at them on site-specific situations and figure out where they are appropriate. There could be spots where they were appropriate, possibly in like denser neighborhoods, and maybe in Breslau and school zones, that maybe we want to consider them, but it wouldn't mean that this would be a new standard going forward. It would just be something we could consider in the future.
Just adding on to Councillor Kudos, I noticed that the speed mitigation measures also reference flashing lights, which I know we had lengthy discussions about with school zones. So I thought that was an interesting add-on.
How would council like to proceed on this one? Councillor Cadeau,
I'll move the recommendation.
discussion? Councillor Burgess, you look like you want to say something.
I just want to get your perspective there, Chair. I know you're not allowed to make motions, but if you want to provide some more insight at all and having it for possibly just information purposes.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, I'm much more comfortable with the document that we take under consideration when making recommendations versus accepting it for policy. Staffs seem to be telling me that this was a consideration, not a policy document. So I guess that answers the question. Anything else? Favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we'll move on to our election report number 4, council. I'm gonna call it honorarium because I struggle with the next word. So we have elections coordinator Leanne Wetzel here to present the report. And Leanne, you may begin whenever you've got it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me this evening. So the report's pretty self-explanatory, but it is a review that we like to do in advance of municipal election. We like to look at council remuneration. Of course, it won't be effective until the next term of council. That's always the policy that we follow, that you would never make a determination on your current remuneration. So it will be effective starting with the next term. We did choose some comparator municipalities, mainly based on size, and that were similar and within, some that were within regional municipalities as well. So certainly down Niagara way. We also looked at the local municipalities as well, just to give it a fair shake. But it is important, that we keep current with our remuneration. We don't want to fall too far behind. It is important when we're trying to, attract effective candidates that want to run for council, that the remuneration is somewhat appropriate. We all know that none of you are here because of the excessive amount of dollars there. So, but it certainly helps to make sure that we keep current with that. And our other recommendation is that we would retain a consultant prior to the 2030 election, much like we did last fall with the ward boundary review. We want to make sure that we're keeping in line We all know growth is really happening there, especially in Breslau area. So we'll look at the ward boundary prior to the 2030. We'll use a consultant for that as well as this as well. And in part of that consultant review, we would hopefully get a citizens committee put in place to get some input from citizens as well at that time. So I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. I know this topic is always a political hot button one in the best of times. In private business, conversations about salaries can be difficult, and here we're having a public one about ourselves. But with that, it is an important one. As mentioned in the staff report, we want to make sure we've got the best qualified people here helping us go forward as a township. So with that, Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. I have a question. Does council currently get cost of living every year?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just looking at with COLA listed in here. I wanted to just clarify that point.
Yes.
Clerk Smith, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments? Councillor Cadeau.
Oh, is everybody ready for some airing of grievances? Because that's what it feels like. It's tough because I think that we all signed up for this knowing that it was a part-time role. But in a practical sense, I think that we could all agree that's not necessarily the case. The hours are long and quite frankly continuous at some points. But the material as well, it's extensive. I mean, this week, the report, thank you, clerk, was over 900 pages. But I think that the level of responsibility, it includes infrastructure risk. We're looking at environmental liability. We're looking at regional coordination. We're looking at statutory decision-making. And so when we talk about comparators, I would argue that the whole field is well underfunded. So I recognize and respect bringing us up to a median. I appreciate it. I think it's overdue. But I think for Woolwich, we also need to think about the local context. How many of our comparators are dealing with groundwater governance or long-term environmental remediation? You know, how many other jurisdictions are seeing the growth at the rate that Woolwich has to oversee? I mean, these are just two examples, and I'm sure that we could all come up with a handful. But whatever issue we identify, it requires our sustained attention as well as our informed judgment, and that takes a lot of time. Now, with all that said, you know, it's not common that people have authority or responsibility to set their own wage. I'm sure if people did, they would increase their wages quite significantly. I think that what I'm really trying to say is I do appreciate staff coming back with this recommendation. Is it sufficient to attract the level of candidates we would like to see in the future? I worry about that. I know that I've looked at the level of compensation and I've had to question it myself about moving forward, knowing that time here is time spent away from my family. It's time spent away from other activities that could be more lucrative. You know, I know that, but much to the point, we didn't sign up for this for the money. At least I didn't. I think that we can all probably say that. So I've aired my grievances, not suggesting any changes to the report, but I wanted it to be said.
Other comments? Councillor Burgess?
Through you, Chair. I appreciate everything you said there, Councillor Cadeau. You really laid out clearly the challenges we have, the stuff we have to balance and understand, and the sacrifices we make. At the same time, though, when staff were looking to do their study for an increase, I kind of made the comment that we've had extreme budget pressures these last 4 years, and I didn't think it was the appropriate time for increases for them. And I'm not going to be hypocritical at this point. As council here, I don't think this is a correct time. I think we have to get our budget numbers under control before we can look at anything like that. And just to reiterate one thing Councillor Cadeau said, the few extra $1,000 difference I don't think is going to make anyone change their mind. People do this because they love Woolwich. They want to support their community. They grew up here, etc. So yeah, I don't think it's appropriate time to make that change.
Councillor Grant?
Thank you. Through you to the rest of council. I would agree with both Councillor Cadeau and Councillor Burgess. My personal feeling is I think it would be hypocritical of us after our budget talks to look at an increase to our wages. That being said, I would still be in support of like the COLA annual adjustments. I think that is more than reasonable. I do want to flag though that by making a decision where we're not increasing these wages, that there could be a larger hit at a future date. And I think it's important that council's aware, but also residents are aware that there may come a day where once we do get our budget books in order, that we're looking at a significantly larger increase at a later date.
Councillor Brandt?
Thank you. Agree with what has been said by everyone here tonight. I think we're in a position where, as Councillor Burgess said, we turn staff down. How can we go ahead and give ourselves a raise when we've done that? So I'm just going to stand with the rest of them. Cost of living, I agree with that, but not the rest.
Councillor Grant?
If through council, I'd put a motion through to amend the recommendation here that we remove the increase in, and I'm going to rely on Clerk Smith to wordsmith this for me, but to remove the increases but keep the COLA adjustment. I will maybe defer to the rest of council's opinion on whether or not we want to retain a consultant for the comprehensive remuneration in the 2030.
Sorry, Councillor Burgess?
If I can just comment to Councillor Grant's motion, I think we can just kill the motion and don't have to specify that since it's already in place at this point, if that's okay. And then, yeah, to council's point, whether they want to do number 3 or not.
Councillor Cadeau?
This is a question to staff. If we were to retain a consultant, what would we be looking at in terms of a cost, and would it be more than the potential increase to the wages?
At this point, I would estimate in today's dollars, of course, probably around 15 to 20,000 for the comprehensive review. You know, if we could somehow tie it in with the ward boundary review, we may see some savings if we can tie the two together. But at this point, I would say we would be in the market of around 15,000.
Thank you. Through you, a question for Leanne. When you were doing the ward boundaries, are you looking to make it as individual councillors versus councillors at large? Like, for example, split Breslau off and have one council and have the rest of Ward 3 as a separate one, for an example?
Again, the review's going to help us with that. We'll use a consultant for those reasons. I mean, you'll recall over the years, Woolwich has had a variety of representation. So I don't think that we would, you know, isolate Breslau any different than what Elmira is, because the two, you know, really are going to become almost similar in size. But, you know, it'll really tell us, you know, councillors at large, you know, have been done in other municipalities. It's hard sometimes because you may get kind of top heavy from one area then. And, you know, like my initial thought would be, we probably don't want to look that route, but we would be open to any suggestion.
Councillor Grant and then Councillor Burgess?
Yeah, I think I would be in support of tying that ward boundary with a look at the remuneration for councillors. I think it makes a lot of sense if we're looking at redrawing lines or anything, that's also part of a discussion, especially if we're looking at, you know, adding a councillor or removing one.
Councillor Burgess?
So just for clarification through Chair, that's 2030 was the ward thing?
Correct.
Mayor Shantz?
I found the answer to my question, but I will make a comment, and I appreciate that if we're holding the line on staff, we don't want to give ourselves an increase. But I would note that that the mayor and councillors are quite low on the list in terms of comparators. Just noting.
Since staff questions come up, I don't know if Director Linz can comment. Do we know what roughly our staff increases have been over the last, I guess, term of council? Is a fair comparison that we're looking at.
Through you, Chair, COLA increases have been right around 3% increases. The other increases, it really depends on the year and where people are at steps, but I'd say around 5% is probably a good baseline, 3% COLA and 2% others, but it really depends on the individuals, because if someone's already at their step, then they wouldn't be getting that 5% increase.
So, Councillor Burgess, to put in context, so we held the line on staff. That's what you're saying, so hold the line here. Okay. Clerk Smith.
Maybe I'll just add a few things to the discussion. I think council did recommend or did remove the market study for staff from the budget, so that has been removed. But I believe you did ask us to put it in the 2027 capital budget. Just a reminder for council that this remuneration that staff recommended would only take effect for the new council. I think Leanne mentioned that. That would be November, mid-November this year, sorry. So there really is not very much of an impact for 2026, and we are looking at the full, really a full year implementation only starting in 2027. So if it helps, just for context and timing, those two studies probably would align if the next council approved market study for staff. The other thing I did just want to pick up on a few things. If you look at some of the competitors, comparators that Leanne used in her study, you know, there are some municipalities, you know, that do pay more than Woolwich, even with a population half the size. Councillor Cadeau kind of mentioned those. And I know I see council working very hard, but ultimately this decision is up to you. So leave it at that.
Question, Clerk Smith. Do the comparators you listed there, would they all have the strong mayor positions as well, or is that a variety?
Yeah, through Mr. Chair. I mean, I'll look at just a few if it helps to pull them out. Wellesley is in your list of examples. It was quite a bit on the lower end, but it's in the region. They don't have a strong mayor system. Mapleton is just north of us. You know, you can see that even their current mayor gets paid more than Woolwich's mayor. That's not a strong mayor. So there's definitely examples here where we are using comparators, partly because we chose to do the study in-house to save the cost of a full consultant. But you're definitely seeing those, you know, we're not really comparing apples to apples when you're looking at, you know, mayors that, to Councillor Cadeau's point, that aren't dealing with some of the big issues, the growth that Woolwich is looking for, and not having to work through the strong mayor budget process. That are making more than Woolwich Council, just for that comparison. So you're seeing what we're looking at. Maybe I'll also note for council, you know, we looked at some other municipalities that were, I mean, King Township was something that we looked at, population 27,000, right on line with Woolwich in terms of population size, but they pay their mayor $103,000. I mean, that was just removed from the data. I think it's too much of an outlier. We're not using those sort of off the charts comparators. We did want to look at things that were close in size, but also close in salary. And the results were, as shown in the report, that this council does make less than their peers.
And I'm not doing a good job as a chair because I forget if we have a motion on the floor.
We have a motion on the, oh, We have a motion on the floor, I believe by Councillor Grant.
Wasn't moved by a second, but I don't know if we need it. I was kind of more just throwing something out there and seeing if we needed a motion, I guess. If that works.
Okay, I'm gonna pretend that didn't happen. Start over again saying, is there a motion or how would council like to proceed? Councillor Cadeau.
I don't know that we've come to a determination on the consultant piece. So I think that that's the crux of what we need to do from here. I think that staff did an excellent job of coming up with some comparators, and we're making a decision to not listen to that. So what's the point of going to the market and getting a consultant to tell us the same thing? Are we going to ignore that too? Or is that going to give us the impetus because it was somebody on the outside that told us that that's what we should be looking at? I just, trying to find the right balance here, I guess.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you. I think when it comes to the consultant, it's more that I would like to see that tied with a boundary discussion or review, as opposed to a separate standalone.
Mr. Benjamin.
Yeah, the other contextual piece through you, Mr. Chair, that I would like to add is that my experience in the 2010 term of council, while they were reluctant at first to hire a consultant, they were pleasantly surprised in the end because the parameters that they also expanded were not looking just at straight dollars compensation, but also looking at what the market was paying councillors in terms of were they able to opt into the benefit program, what other types of benefits were being offered with respect to payments to councillors, recognizing again, the reality is at the end of the day, it's really no different than hiring at a staff level. If you want to attract quality talent to positions, you need to be able to pay accordingly. So I did just want to highlight the fact that council was very reluctant, but made comments how pleased they were in the end with the end result because they expanded the parameters. And I think you're also looking at this responsibly, in the sense that staff recommended that there might be opportunities through cost efficiencies to combine this with the ward boundary review. So anyways, I just wanted to give that context in terms of a little bit of history. That previous councils did struggle with it, but at the same time did see some value in doing it.
Just following up on the word boundary review, would that be occurring in 2020 or we do that in 2029 to have better?
It would occur in 2029 in order to be in place for 2030.
Thank you. Okay. So looking for direction or motion on this.
To Clerk Smith, would we need to give a motion to add the council remuneration, oh my word, to the ward boundary discussion, or would that be something that we could give direction to staff to do when it comes time to that?
To you, Mr. Chair, definitely could help just to give us a direction so we know what we're working towards. If you weren't to give us any direction tonight, obviously the remuneration for council would be unchanged, separate from the COLA. But then we would probably bring back another report in the future to retain a consultant. We have a request from council to hire a consultant to do a ward boundary review, so we would just look at tacking this on to that. I should also say there's been some early conversations with the other township clerks about doing see if we can have a consultant do multiple reviews. Again, we like to use each other as comparators, so that could also lead to some cost savings on the remuneration side. So really to answer your question, if you give us direction today, we'll do it. If you don't give us direction today, we'll ask the next council.
Councillor Cadeau.
Just going to do it because why not? I'm going to move the recommendations and see if there's a seconder.
Oh, sorry, turn that mic on. We've got a motion on the floor. Is there a seconder at this point? seconded by Mayor Shantz. Leads us to discussion on the motion. Councillor Burgess.
Through you, Chair, just to the comment I think Clerk Smith made. I'm not opposed to the 29/30 date, but I think at this point, let's just leave it. That's where I'm sitting, and we can have the new council can have a conversation on it. It's just where I stand.
Further debate, opinions? Councillor Kittle?
You get a recorded vote.
Clerk Smith has a piece of paper. Perfect. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Clerk Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As requested, I will do a recorded vote. I will ask for council to vote on the motion that was in the staff recommendation, which is to approve an increase of just over $9,000 to the base remuneration of the mayor, approve an increase of just over $3,500 to the base remuneration of councillors, and retain a consultant for a comprehensive council remuneration review prior to the 2030 municipal election. With that, I will call councillors. Sorry,
just point of clarity. Are we voting on the whole thing or just the small part?
I believe it was the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll call council in a random order. Councillor Burgess. Councillor Schwindt.
In favor.
Councillor Bryant.
Opposed.
Councillor Cadeau.
In favor.
Mayor Shantz.
In favor.
Councillor Grant.
Opposed.
And that motion is defeated with 3 votes in favor and 3 votes against.
Okay, is there a further motion or do we leave this one as it is? Not seeing anything, so I believe staff have direction for the 2030 process. And we will move on to the general amendment on comprehensive zoning, bylaw 26-2024. You're back up, Mr. Delicoli.
Good evening. Back tonight, so we previously had the public meeting in December. So back tonight with our recommendation report. Let's go. So proposed amendments number 1 to number 15 will affect all lands within the municipal boundary of the township. Proposed amendment number 16 affects only 9 Shifley in Breslau, and proposed amendment number 17 affects only 61 Woolwich Street North in Breslau. So going through the proposed changes, proposed amendment number 1, new measures to enforce the zoning bylaw. This is to align enforcement provisions with neighboring municipalities and to more quickly address infractions without resorting to legal action through the court system. Proposed amendment number 2, new and updated definitions. This was to provide clarity, consistency, and precision regarding parking minimums in a garage, exterior landing, building heights, and others. Proposed amendment number 3, accessory dwelling units. This was to facilitate the construction of ADUs in the township by increasing flexibility, unit sizes, and heights, ultimately to create more housing and density in a time of need. Proposed amendment number 4 was to clarify buffer provisions. This was to ensure that buffers were not applied between 2 identical zones, but instead between 2 different zones where one may have a sensitive land use. Proposed amendment number 5 was to increase maximum driveway widths on smaller lots. This is to increase the width from 3.66 meters to 4.6 meters, ultimately to help homeowners accommodate multiple vehicles for both themselves, but also for accessory dwelling units. Amendment number 6 is to permit paired driveways. This was to reduce the side yard setback to 0.6 meters to allow for paired driveways when the driveways are touching. And this could lead to possible increases to on-street parking supplies. Proposed amendment number 7 was to exterior mechanical unit setbacks, providing some additional clarifications. So here we clarified and expanded upon outdoor mechanical unit setbacks, the requirements of them, to match the EDIM, the Engineering Development and Infrastructure Manual. There are different setbacks for both ground-mounted units versus suspended units in order to protect the drainage in the side yard. Proposed amendment number 8, municipal servicing requirement for new lots. This requires new lots serviced in settlement areas to connect to municipal services to prevent the construction of new wells and septic systems in settlement areas such as St. Jacobs, Elmira, and Breslau. And this is also to ensure consistency with the official plan. Proposed amendment number 9, parking and driveway provision updates, additions, and clarity. These proposed amendments seek to ensure parking requirements are clearly understood in the zoning bylaw, as well to improve safety and vehicle circulation in parking lots and to align the provisions with interdepartmental policies. Proposed amendment number 10, the updated illustrations to match updated provisions. This was simply to update some parking illustrations to match the updated zoning bylaw provisions to make sure that they serve as an effective visual tool. Proposed amendment number 11, increased farm building cluster setbacks and clarifications. Here we sought to create more flexibility for farmers by increasing the farm cluster setbacks from 30 meters to 50 meters and clarifying the structures and buildings that apply when measuring those distances. Proposed amendment number 12, permitting boarding houses. Here we sought to re-add the boarding house as a permitted use in select zones to create more housing diversity and options to serve all ages and income levels. A little context here, the boarding house was previously permitted in the old zoning bylaw in the R4 and R5 zones. It was missed in the new zoning bylaw, and so it's being proposed to be re-added alongside the R3 zone as well, which has, in the new zoning bylaw, been updated to better match the types of densities in the R4 and R5 zones. Proposed amendment number 13 to expand the permitted zones for industrial malls. This is simply to allow greater flexibility for industrial malls by permitting them in the EM4 and EM5 zones. Proposed amendment number 14, amending mapping for hazard lands. Again, this was pretty simple, updating hazard land mapping using updated GRCA mapping to ensure developments are avoiding areas prone to flooding and or erosion. And proposed amendment number 15, there were a number of spelling, grammar, numbering, cross-references, and clarifications that needed to be done to the zoning bylaw through its implementation, and these were addressed in the amending bylaw. For the site-specific amendments, number 16 at 9 Shifley Place. The property at 9 Shifley Place was previously redesignated and rezoned to commercial mixed-use 2 through the township's official plan update and subsequent zoning bylaw update. The owner reached out and asked that the longstanding existing uses be formally recognized through a site-specific zoning provision, which is permitted under the official plan. And this amendment recognizes the existing uses and no compatibility or concerns from the public were identified. Lastly, proposed amendment number 17 at 61 Woolwich Street North. This is to correct the zoning from MU3 to MU2 to ensure consistency with the official plan as the property was previously incorrectly zoned. Before I move on to comments, I will also quickly summarize the changes from when we had the public meeting to today. And this is based on some of the feedback as well that I'll mention shortly. This included clarification that ADUs can exist on non-conforming lots, but they're still subject to other regulations, such as environmental restrictions. The addition of institutional zones for buffers. Clarification that servicing requirements for new lots can be found in Section 16 of the site-specific amendments. Amending the parking ratio for recreational playing courts. This previously required around 26 parking spaces per playing court. And based on best practice research, was determined that four was the best practice, and this is what is proposed. Updating of terminology to remove the references to daycare centers and day nurseries, and just replacing them with childcare. And a correction, a clerical error where a site-specific amendment was applied to the wrong property address when the zoning bylaw was updated in 2024. So simply correcting the address on that one. So comments received. We received some comments from some agencies and boards. They requested clearer wording in alignment with policy definitions, including ADUs, non-conforming lots, servicing, and buffers. These changes were made to the zoning bylaw, to the amending bylaw, excuse me, to improve clarity and consistency. The school board reached out expressing support for the proposed amendments and requested appropriate buffering from school sites, which led to the inclusion of institutional zones for buffers, updated terminology as mentioned for childcare, and these were addressed in the amending bylaw. We also had a few public comments, some requesting simple clarifications, as well as more specific questions regarding the site-specific amendments relating to height, as well as drainage. And we clarified that the zoning corrections, in this case to 61 Woolwich Street North, do not inherently enable redevelopment. There's no redevelopment or planning application tied to this change, and it does not change the height permissions on the property. These additional clarifications that were requested by the public were added to the amending bylaw. Recommendations in front of you tonight. We've got to approve the zoning bylaw amendment application OZS 2025-12, being the general housekeeping amendment to the comprehensive zoning bylaw 26-2024 to address general zoning issues, site-specific amendments affecting two properties, and to conform with or be consistent with other provincial, regional, or township planning policies, definitions, bylaws, and/or statutes. The second is that the amending bylaw be in accordance with the proposed bylaw attached as Appendix A to the report. Number three, that the zoning amendments be deemed in compliance with the official plan of the Township of Woolwich. And lastly, that another public meeting be deemed not required pursuant to Section 34(12) of the Planning Act, because the changes contained in the amending bylaw attached as Appendix A that were proposed after the public meeting on December 16th are considered minor. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any questions, Councillor Burgess and Councillor Bryant?
Through you, Chair, just a couple of questions and clarifications. So for proposed amendment number 8, the municipal servicing requirements for new lots. We have a lot of properties in Elmira, George High, Eldale, et cetera, that are on either septic or water. And I just want to understand what's the trigger point, or when do they have to connect to municipal services? Like if they're gonna do a renovation or build an ADU, does that now mean they got to bring in a pipe, or is it just if they're separating lots? And if there's not a pipe there, if they are dividing a lot, do they need to pay for the pipe to come all the way up the road, or is it only if it's existing? Maybe a lot of questions there.
Through the chair, we're not going to be forcing this provision does not force anyone to connect to municipal services if the services are not available at the street. They're only going to be required to connect if they are creating a new lot and the servicing is available on the street.
Perfect, that helps. And if I can ask one more, on the next proposed amendment number 9, can you just clarify a bit more on the parking the first paragraph, I think there, are we reducing the amount of parking required, or is it, or what exactly is happening there? Yeah.
Through the chair, which amendment are you referring to?
Update sufficiency and clarity. Talks about one parking space per dwelling unit created, while the required parking for commercial uses will continue to allow a 50% reduction. Yeah, clarity on.
Through the chair, so this is simply, again, to clarify the existing provisions. Currently, there's a bit of a gray area regarding the, I'll say, discount that's applied to some of the uses in the core area. And we want to clarify that the discount is only applied to commercial uses and not residential uses. So residential uses must still provide a 1-for-1 unit to parking ratio.
Councillor Bryant and Mayor Schantz.
Thank you. I have two questions for you. The first one's around number 16, Shifley Place. Did we speak with the owners? Because I know there was a number of concerns they had raised about the property, such as time limits of 12 months if it wasn't being used and whatnot. Did we get all that clarified with the residents and they were okay with all of those changes?
Through the chair, yes. We met with the resident
Right.
and we addressed all of their concerns.
Okay.
And they're pleased with the uses that we are recognizing under the site-specific amendment.
Okay, so that's been straightened out. The other question I have is around boarding houses. And being in subdivisions, R3, 4, and 5, does this create problems going forward? Like, I'm looking at it from, you've got a transient group of people living in these homes. They could be there a day, a week, a month. Like, they're not tied to a year-long lease or anything like that. And I'm finding that a little concerning as to the number of people that could be in these homes, potential safety features and potential problems within a residential community.
Through the chair. So these were previously permitted in the old zoning bylaw. And at that time, no concerns were identified. It was simply missed when it wasn't brought over. We also permit group homes in those zones. Unlike boarding houses, group homes have to be licensed by the province, but they largely, missing the word, have a similar presence and they operate similarly. It's hard to zone for people. We can't really zone for people. We have to zone for uses. And so it's hard to say who would occupy those residences.
Because I look at this as more of a hotel setting, I guess.
Yep, if I can add to that, through you, Mr. Chair. So when we did our housing needs assessment, it did identify that there was a need for alternative housing forms and more affordable housing options. This is one of those more affordable housing options. It was permitted in the previous zoning bylaw. The other thing to remember too is that you can have a group of people of any size living in a house. If there's no locks on the door, no rent exchanged, we can't limit the number of people in the house. A boarding house would limit the number of people through other mechanisms like parking, because it does limit the number of rooms that you can rent out, or it's like sleeping quarter rooms that would require parking as well. So it does still control the number of occupants you can be in there, but it's still, with any boarding house, you still have to, as a municipality, prove that there is money being exchanged in rental for those rooms in order to be able to enforce that. Otherwise, they just consider it a regular single detached house.
Thank you.
Mayor Schantz.
Thank you. Just a question on the 50% reduction for commercial. Can you just explain that a little bit more?
Through the chair. So the 50% reduction, to my understanding, has been in the zoning bylaw for quite some time. It was added with the principle that when you're in a downtown core area, there's lots of other parking available, not only in municipal parking lots, but on-street parking lot. In addition, the thought process is that once you park one time, you're able to walk around to different businesses from there, and therefore you don't need a parking space at every single shop. And because of that, you're able to reduce the amount of parking required for a specific property.
I question the availability of parking. I think especially in the last year, it's the availability has decreased and parking has increased.
We just passed the bylaw about parking a couple hours ago, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Ms. Freeze.
Yeah, just to add to that too, a lot of the downtown properties are very limited in size. And in order to allow a commercial use to be on that property and also require the full permitted or required parking on that property, it could limit a lot of businesses as well. So this is kind of a way to ensure that we can get more business in our downtown core specifically.
I guess if I can just editorialize for a moment, my comment is maybe made to remind us all that we need to be careful as we reduce parking in the core because we're seeing increased need.
Councillor Burgess.
Through you, Chair, just wanted to follow up on Councillor Bryan's comments on the boarding house there. So when I read the definition, it's very generic and just saying you can just add people. Is there, like, what's the application process like to get this approved? Does there need to be a set number of rooms per individuals, or can it just be kind of free for all? And why did we add R3? Because I believe previously it was only R4 and R5. And if we're doing all three of those zones, that's basically like all of Elmira. So I do question that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we added R3 because it's a typical zone that's very similar to R4 and R5 that would typically allow, and we did allow up to fourplexes in those zones. So we do actually allow higher densities in those zones already with fourplexes. So that's why it was included with R3 as well. And the other question.
What's the application process?
Oh,
Is there a limit?
sorry. Again, through you, Mr. Chair, there was not an application process because if it is included as of right use in a residential zone, then they would be able to go ahead and do that. No.
Further questions or comments? You're thinking, Councillor Burgess?
Just, I guess, last question. To Mayor Sean's point, I question the parking thing. I don't know if that's change for tonight or not, but on the boarding house, if we were to remove that allowance or strictly put it in R5, say, what would that look like? Does that change any of your other needing public houses? Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So my recommendation would be not to make changes at this time. We've already gone out back in December with the public meeting where this was all circulated to the public, and we didn't get any comments on it. So we're now bringing it back for final approval. I would say that it's very far in the process to make changes at this point. If the council was concerned about the boarding units, I would say a small change that could probably be considered without a public meeting would be to put a limitation on it. So we could say four, but not more than 10.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Further to that, if they're putting bedrooms in the basement, they would need to have egress windows, would they not? So we could put in something about safety standards or something in that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So if they were putting basements in the bedroom that were new, they would need building permits for that. So that we would have a ability to have an approval there.
Do they need to apply to have a boarding house, or is it just something they can set up and do?
They can set up and do that. The difference between a regular house and a boarding house would typically be locks on a door.
Yeah, I find that concerning that there's no application process to run a boarding house. That's my thought process.
Okay, I've had some discussion looking for council's direction on this. Councillor Grant.
I just to kind of maybe to Councillor Bryant's point about boarding houses, I feel that even if you did have an application in for boarding houses, that would not prevent people from running a boarding house without an application. So without an enforcement measure there, I don't really see how we would address that. Essentially, I understand where your concern is coming from, but that's nothing to say that if anyone wants to run a boarding house minus an application, they're going to do it.
Ms. Reese?
Sorry again, through you, Mr. Chair. So since I've been at Woolwich, we've only had one incident of a boarding house where their complaint through bylaw, and the complaints were related to parking.
How does council want to proceed?
I was going to move it the recommendation.
We've got a motion on the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kiddo. Discussion. Councillor Burgess?
Yeah, the one boarding house we've had, I don't know how much we can say on it, but I think there has been issues around it. So again, just to the comments being made, it does concern me. So I will make an amendment if I could have a seconder to put it just to R5 and remove R3, which wasn't there before in R4.
I'll second it.
Seconder, Ms. Reese?
Sorry, just to clarify, it was not in R3, it already was in R4 and R5, but you want to limit it to R5.
So we've got an amended motion. We discuss the amendment because it's seconded. And then we go back to motion. Any discussion on the amended motion, which is limiting boarding houses to the R5 zone? Not seeing any. I'll call the question on the amendment to amend the motion to only include R5 zoning for boarding houses. All in favor? Opposed? That one's defeated. So we're back to the original motion. Discussion. I call the question. Not seeing any discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That one's carried. We have a general zoning bylaw amendment. I thought we spent all fall and January working on budgets, and Mr. Lynn is here again tonight to talk about the water and wastewater budget for 2026.
For the
Let you
chair,
begin.
I'm just, before I start, I was just asked Mayor Shantz if she wants to say any words, as it's the mayor's budget to propose. I'm also capable of going through a presentation as well.
Yeah, I really don't have comments prepared for the beginning of this. We've had a number of discussions in the last months about water and wastewater, and Mr. Lynn worked with me and with his staff to bring this to you. So I will let him do that.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, and through the chair. We're proposing the water and wastewater, the utility budgets. At this time, council will remember that we met 2 weeks ago to talk about the water wastewater budgets just after we concluded the tax supported budgets. And we really looked at all the high level issues that we were facing in the water wastewater budgets. Subsequent to that, the mayor publicly released on January 30th, 2026, the mayor's proposed utility budgets. It still follows the strong mayor process, and I'll defer to the clerk if there's any questions related to the actual timing and the processes. So it was very much in line with what was presented on the 27th. It's 4.8% for water, 6.7% for wastewater. And I'll just share a very quick slide shows. It's mostly graphics, so hopefully it's quick. Just to give you a little bit more context on some of the rates that are being proposed here, I'd also bring council and the public's attention to Appendix 1. That has most of the high level items that are going to be discussed here. And that would probably be your best guide if you're looking for the specifics that make up these utility rates. So just as a reminder, this is what our current structure is. These are 2025 rates, and these are just the volumetric rates. For water, it's 227, and for sewer, it's 372, and there's a township and region component of that. I wanted to provide some additional information, and it's in your package. I believe it's Appendix 4, related to some consumption data. So these are graphical representations of that data, and essentially the green bars are the 2024 data and the blue bars are 2025 data. The darker bars are the region, and on this slide, this is water consumption. I won't really talk about most of these smaller ones. You can see they're pretty flat, and that's what we would expect for similar regional billing to retail billing. Essentially, what the region bills us, we should be billing more or less what we bill our customers. But in Elmira, you can see we try to break it down too with different settlement areas. Elmira seems to be the biggest issue related to water and water loss. The actual increase is roughly, I forget the number, around 7%, and it's increased to 11% in 2025. These are all preliminary information, but it was based on the most recently available information. So our water loss has increased, and that obviously affects some of our revenues. Just on the wastewater side, you can see that it is a bit of a different story. There's more deviation between the regional billing and the township billing. And in particular, again, the biggest area is in the Elmira side. St. Jacobs and Breslau, there's other issues there, but Elmira is really driving a lot of that loss. A lot of these on the wastewater side are driven by I&I issues, but there's other things that factor into this calculation. That volume, that difference essentially, the green bars to the blue bars, has decreased since 2024, which looks like we're trending in the right direction, but it is still pretty considerable. Hundreds of thousands of cubic meters essentially is the gap. And with that regional cost that we showed earlier, if you multiply that by the number of cubic meters, you can see where some of the revenue loss is going. There was also been a lot of discussion recently about comparative rates that Woolwich's rates compared to some of our comparators. So I previously presented this slide, which shows the absolute volumetric rate. And so you can see we're slightly below Kitchener there, and wastewater makes up a higher proportion of our utility rates to water. But we're still on the higher end, less than Kitchener. There was recently an analysis done by the local newspaper comparing the town of Woolwich's rates to a number of different municipalities. So we tried to replicate at least some of the data in that report, and we found at least one item, I think it's worth mentioning to council, that we have a fixed and variable rate, or a volume rate. The fixed rate that they were using was a bi-monthly rate. Essentially, we charge our fixed rate every 2 months to our residents. So you would have to divide that by 2 to get our monthly fixed rate. So that was one of the things that we noticed when we went through our own analysis. But we did do kind of a similar comparison here. So on the water side, and we looked at them separately from water and wastewater. Woolwich, so this is an important distinction too. The orange bars is our kind of fixed rates, and then we looked at the same average user on the volume rates, and those are the blue bars here. And so on the water side, Woolwich is actually below some of our comparators. We're a little bit above Kitchener, but Kitchener is interesting that they don't have that fixed charge. They blend everything into that volumetric rate. So in that previous slide that we saw where Kitchener has higher volumetric rates, they also account for some of that fixed charge here. So they're actually on the lower end on the water side because they don't have that same fixed cost. But again, on the water side, we're below a number of comparators, which tracks in line with some of the other data we've been seeing. On the wastewater side, we did the same analysis. You can see the orange bars are looking at our fixed rates and the blue bars are looking at our volumetric rates. And we're on the higher end. So we're higher on our comparators on the wastewater side and even higher than all of the other comparators. And part of that, in my analysis, is to make up for some of the loss that we're seeing, some of the deficits that we're charging higher rates in order to make up for some of those deficits, but also some of the Kitchener rates are blended into that rate. So that's also driving some of those costs, but we are on the higher end on the wastewater side. So when you combine the two, this graph shows the comparison. So it's showing the same volume for water and wastewater. So again, things are much more in line with what we would kind of expect. I would say we're very much in line with many of our comparators. There's very little difference, especially between the four listed here. But we are still on the higher end when you compare water and wastewater, mostly due to our fixed rate, but also our volume rate. So the proposal this year through the mayor's budget was taking a very conservative approach to water and wastewater rates. Again, as a reminder, the region are 5.9% of that wholesale rate, so we have to account for that already in our fixed costs. And then we mark up some of those costs as well. So we're requesting, or the mayor's budget includes an 11-cent increase on the volumetric rate from 227 to 238, and that's a 4.8% increase. The fixed rate would be increased in line with the volumetric rate at that same 4.8% increase to keep us in line with that inflationary increase. And then another item is we're proposing to still increase the water contingency reserve, and that's flowed through the volume rates, increase from 460,000 to 500,000 until the target balance is met. I'll be taking a reserve report later this year to talk a little bit about target reserve balances. But roughly, I would say the target reserve balance should be around 2 million. So I would say we probably have another 3 years to go before we hit that target balance. On the wastewater side, again, it's a 6.7% increase or 25 cents from $3.72 to $3.97. The same increase to the fixed rate at 6.7% to keep up with inflation. One of the items here is we're recommending an increase of 140,000 to the wastewater contingency reserve. We're currently putting 180,000 in. We're requesting to increase that to 320,000. That will help offset some of any anticipated deficits that we may realize, but then also once that target balance is reached, then we could use that to stop those contributions and reduce future rates. So this is just a quick table kind of summarizing those increases. Again, on the water side, 4.8% for both the fixed and the volumetric rate. And on the wastewater side, it's a 6.7% increase and for both volume and the fixed rate. And the fixed rate is a little bit more complicated because it does depend on the size of the connection. But there's a table in your report showing the specific fixed rates, but this is the average residential user. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments.
Thanks, Mr. Lynn. Questions?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Lynn. If we were to pull the capital out of this budget and put it into the other budget, what would it do to this one? Like, I think Jared had mentioned previously that road repairs were factored into this as well because he felt they were part of projects and whatnot.
I'll start and
I know it's a tough one.
Jared can jump in as well. So the capital budget's already been passed. It's included in the mayor's tax supported budget, but it isn't funded through taxes. It's actually funded through rates, and it's part of that fixed reserve contribution. So essentially pulling that out of that budget and putting it into this budget for display purposes wouldn't really change anything. Really, it's still funded the same way. But what we kind of referred to a little bit in the previous presentation, which I think you're referring to, is a part of certain tax-supported roads, in particular projects, are partially funded from these water and sewer reserves, which are also a draw on some of these rates.
Right.
And so I would have to look to Jared to actually quantify that. I really couldn't estimate of how much that would save or how much of that is. I'll turn it over to him.
Through you, Chair Schwindt, to Councillor Bryan. I think we got to be clear that water and sewer is appropriate to be used in reconstruction projects. I think back in and around 2012, 2013, there was an exercise in our department to look at sort of a trench component of the water and sewer. And I think where Director Lynn is speaking to is because there hasn't been enough levy, new levy certainly, or infrastructure reserve monies available. And the township has been reliant on CCBF, or formerly Fed gas tax, or OCIF for that matter, to cover costs such as granular base in the road or asphalt, for example. And that at times has, some of that cost has been absorbed by the water and sewer rates through a recon, but very clear. It's not in paving, it's nothing like that. It's when you actually are replacing water infrastructure or sewer infrastructure. But it has looked to cover some of those, what we would deem to be more tax appropriate costs with respect to the road. And that's just simply not having sufficient levy available to cover some of those costs. That's what we're looking to try to rectify going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm going to pass the chair over to Mayor Shantz for the balance of this conversation, since it's a budget item.
Sure, happy to do that. And do I assume your hand is up?
It is. So just looking back at the 2025 water purchases in the region, sales to customers, I think it's 11% difference. Is it fair to say that we should be setting a target on that, maybe a 5% variance going forward? Would that be achievable? Maybe not in 26, but 27 for sure, with new water meters, etc. And then next steps would be, so it's wastewater percentage is not pleasant. How do we get that, especially in Elmira, to something that's sustainable longer term?
Through the mayor or chair, I would maybe look to Director Poupé to know what the right number is. I know for the DQWMS standard that the water loss of less than 10% is usually the upper limit. It should be lower than 10% for sure. I'm not really sure what the right number is. I could prepare an analysis. It would take some time, but do some comparators of what is like an appropriate water loss, because it's not going to be zero. Probably 5 to 8% is probably a reasonable target for the water to get there, because I do think with the water meter replacements will increase the amount of revenue being generated, which will close the gap there. Again, I think lower than 40% on the wastewater side is probably a good target, and just closing that gap. Again, what the right number is, it's probably higher than the water side, and maybe Director Poupé could add in some comments of his.
Director Poupé.
Yeah, dear Chair Shantz, to Councillor Schwindt's question. So I think it's important to understand there will always be I&I, there will always be water loss, right? And I think 10% isn't an awful number, depends on your system size. I think that's important too. We are aware that Elmira does have some significant inflow and infiltration pieces, and council has endorsed, or certainly the mayor's endorsed that initiative to begin here in 2026. We've got a lot of pieces planned to look at lining some of the sewers to hopefully improve the wastewater side. There is an allowable limit for that. I don't have the exact numbers. I know that it's about 0.15 liters per second per hectare, or 2.5 or 0.25 liters per second per hectare. Depends who you talk to, but there is some allowable limits that is baked into the design of sewer systems to allow for that. It's impossible to get a perfect system, and flow monitoring in and of its a science either. So there is some variances, but I think what's recognized is we've made significant inroads in St. Jacobs recently. I think that's important, and you will see more of that as we get spring weather. That's another problem with inflow and infiltration, is you do need weather to really understand how you've improved your system over time. We are aware that Breslau, we made some significant investments over the last number of years, and we are seeing that with our flow monitoring data in the heavy events. We are seeing it not respond the way it used to. So, a lot of the initiatives that council has endorsed have been improvements. Water main breaks, fires, all those things add up to water loss, right? So I mean, it's difficult to pin down, but there is, I don't think it's wrong to suggest anywhere between 5 to 10% would be a reasonable number to manage And then on the wastewater side, I think we're making significant inroads, hopefully over the next number of years with Elmira here.
Okay. Other questions? Councillor Schwindt?
Sure. Just look at the wastewater again. I think it's terminology that's catching me here, but we've got administrative overhead of 1.1 million, which we add on billing and invoicing on top of that, 100,000. Can you go over what administrative overhead means on wastewater and staffing in particular? The numbers don't quite line up.
Through the mayor, can you just clarify where you're looking?
Sorry, page 13. We've got department wastewater administrative overhead, 2.78 FTEs. We've got 770 costs, and then facility costs, operating costs, 1.1 million. So I just
Sorry, which report are you looking at?
Through you, Mayor Sean. So I think I found the page. I think part of the confusion is we released the budget on January 30th, and I don't know if we included those budget pages in the council package. So I just had to pull up the original Excel files. So I am seeing kind of we're calling it administrative overhead. Like to your point, Councillor Schwindt, it's probably not the best descriptor. I would say those are internal costs related to like running the system, but some of those staff costs are some of the things I referred to previously. A number of infrastructure services staff are included in those staff costs. The director of infrastructure services, manager of operations, and a number of staff. I can pull up that slide from the previous one. Equipment costs is the same kind of, there's like a cost allocation. We do some facility costs for this building because the staff and that based on a head count basis. Other costs, sorry, I just have to. So just looking at the details, so that those other costs go down onto that page. I think probably the next page, page 14. There's a little section for other costs. The biggest driver of those is I&I monitoring in St. Jacobs, Breslau I&I monitoring. There's a debenture repayment. If you recall, we issued debt related to the North Sanitary Pumping Station, and that's part of the debt repayment costs are included in there. So those are the high level costs, but if you want more detail, I could provide more detail. I could also, I had it in a previous slide, the actual breakdown of staff that are included in those staff costs, if you'd like.
You mentioned staff costs and bring in those other people. That makes sense to me. It also scares me in that pretty sure we're over allocating costs to the wastewater department, which means we're under allocating them to the general levy, which means our levy tax is going to be under pressure, even more pressure in future years as we allocate better.
I think that's a fair statement. Other questions?
I found the slide if you want to see the breakdown of the
Sure.
cost.
Yeah.
So these are all the positions that are included in the line. And so this is the total amount for both water and wastewater. You'd have to divide by 2.
Sorry.
It's becoming more scary. I wish I hadn't seen that slide, to be honest. But we can't change that. It's still money we're going to spend. I'd like to change gears a little bit and go over to the pumping station for Kitchener. That's broken down as a separate line item. Are we comparing apples and apples when we look at the cost of wastewater that flows through that station versus other stations? And what I'm trying to say is it seems it looks like it's more expensive than our other systems, but I've got to think that it isn't. So I don't know if someone could walk me through the cost allocation on that Victoria Street pumping station.
So are you asking specifically for that or how that fits into the overall costing or both?
How it fits in the overall costing.
Through the mayor to Councillor Schwindt, I'll start, and again, I'll defer over to Director Poupé. We just received a bill from Kitchener, and it's around $1 million. It's right around plus or minus a few 20 or 30,000, but it's about $1 million. And there isn't much of a breakdown of costs other than the volume that we charge. And so it is a significant contributor in a $7 million budget. $1 million is, and plus the regional costs, just for that pumping station. I don't know how that really compares to other stations or ones that we operate. Maybe Director Poupé could comment on that. I can say that pumping station, that cost is going to increase to 1.1, 1.2 million. So it's going to be a larger driver of the overall rate increase for that.
Mr. Poupé.
Yeah, Mayor Shantz to Councillor Schwindt. So just for clarity, if you're looking at the wholesale water costs, like the city of Kitchener is responsible for all the maintenance and operations at that Victoria North pumping station. We simply pay for any enhancements required to reach our limit from a capacity perspective, and that's the capital program that's underway right now, so that we can realize our 189 liters a second through our cross-border. But these are simply volumetric charges that Kitchener just records and then charges back. Just looking at this, and I don't have the exact cubic meter volume threshold, but you know, if you're looking at the wholesale rates from Elmira, we're probably double the population right now in Elmira versus Breslau thereabouts. The numbers from a wholesale perspective generally make sense from that perspective, but there likely is some increased cost just simply going through Kitchener through a cross-border arrangement there as opposed to directly into the region's treatment facility too. But it doesn't look that far off as far as I'm concerned. And like, I think we would have to get into some of the more details to get a better explanation for council.
I just want to make sure it was kind of in line. I understand we're pumping it further than we are Elmira, so it'll cost more, but it's got to be in line as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, this is scheduled to come back next week as council, unless someone wants to, is anxious to, what would the motion be?
Through Mayor Shantz, I believe it's 2 weeks on February 24th, unless council wishes to shorten their time for amendments to the water wastewater budget.
Okay, I'm not seeing anyone jumping up and down at that. So this will come back in 2 weeks, sorry. And we can finish it up then. And I'll turn the chair back over.
Thanks, Mayor Shantz. And next item on the agenda is our fire master plan. So tonight we have Fire Chief Dennis Aldous here in person to present an update on where we're at in the fire master plan process.
Good evening, everybody. So the fire master plan process is the information we have for you is the RFP came back with a request for proposal. Because the amount of the RFP that the client, consultant we've selected, the approving body under the township's procurement policy was SMT. So staff recommended that SMT approve engaging the services of Lumex Group at a cost of $47,134.21 net of HST rebate. And SMT approved the recommendation on February the 2nd, 2026. Considering the importance of this project to the fire service and the community overall, staff felt that it was important to provide council with a memo plus a PowerPoint presentation outlining the key objectives of this project. Another thing to make note is it's towards the bottom of the memo. Our fire master plan lines up with a directive from this directive of the CEO to lead some continuous improvements and transformation, and this works out pretty well in timing with his information that he will need to bring that back to council. So I'll give you a little bit of a brief overview of how the process is and how it's going to work. One thing to make note is that as part of this whole program is that the consultant will be coming to SM2 council and making a presentation outlining the entire project in its whole. So I just want to give you a bit of a wholesale idea of what this is all about. So I'm going to cover 4 key objectives tonight: the purpose of the fire master plan, the deliverables of the fire master plan, an overview of the consultant, and the consultant's process. So the fire master plan will integrate data visualization tools, scenario-based modeling, and interactive dashboards to provide council, fire services, and the community with a clear, actionable insights. It will incorporate the fire department's community risk assessment, provide a comprehensive, actionable plan that ensures an efficient, effective, and sustainable fire service for the next decade. This plan aims to enhance operational efficiency, improve response times, ensure the fire service is well equipped for the future growth and challenges of our municipality. One of the biggest things that bothers me is that, are we prepared with the airport growing as big as it is? What happens if we start to see the construction of hotels down in that area? I want to make sure that we're prepared in order for this to happen. This plan is designed to make us more proactive instead of reactive. So it gives us our growth so we know approximately where we can be. This plan will be an interactive plan. It's not just a piece of paper that says, here's how we're going. As part of this service is they're going to provide us with the technology and the support in order to, if something comes up that we need to change, is that we can make that change with them at a set rate plus whatever the cost of living is, which is around $100, which is pretty reasonable, I think, for us to get something looked after by them. So some of the deliverables of the fire master plan include staffing, level of service, future demand modeling, fire station location and functionality, administration, apparatus and equipment, municipal fire protection and water supply, community engagement, public relations, environmental sustainability, training, professional development, fire prevention, public education, fire investigation, and then a comprehensive implementation plan. So the deliverable of staffing is to analyze our current staffing levels and recommend improvements based on industry standards, best practices, and community needs, ensuring that we're adequately equipped and trained to identify community risks. Level of service will review current service level demand, response times, community fire-related statistics, comparing them with provincial benchmarks, similar municipalities, and FPA standards, and identifying areas of improvement and recommend service level targets. With future demand modeling, It assesses future community growth and risk factors to forecast how demand for fire service will evolve, recommend strategies for adapting to these changes through technology, innovation, and continuous improvement. Fire station location and functionality is to develop a dynamic model to optimize fire station locations and functionality over the next 5, 10, 20 years. This includes staffing projections, facility requirements, future response strategies, automatic aid, and fire protection agreements. Under administration, we're going to assess the current administrative process, records management system, and identify challenges and opportunities to optimize administrative processes and leverage advances in technology to ensure legislative compliance. This is the kind of the area I think we're going to more focus with the CAO on what he needs for his reports. Apparatus and equipment, which I know has been a big discussion over the last few years with the cost of fire trucks. We're going to review our current condition of our fire vehicles and equipment maintenance, replacement schedules, and recommend a long-term acquisition and replacement strategy, and propose cost-saving efficiencies, including environmentally friendly options. With municipal fire protection and water supply, we're going to review our current status of our municipal fire water supplies and propose recommendations and strategies to improve or enhance our municipal fire protection water supplies. This is not just including what we have in our urban settlements. I know the water situation is a key thing in Waterloo Region and Woolwich at this moment in time. This also includes if it can improve our efficiency by putting in reservoirs in areas like North Woolwich as an example, or even Bloomingdale, to help make us more efficient so we can service the community in those areas that are not hydranted better. Communication and public relations is developing a strategy to improve public awareness for fire safety and engage with stakeholders to ensure the needs and expectations are met. We know that's very needed right now and even into the future, so we understand that people understand that we're a volunteer service, we're not a full-time service, and I still know a lot of people that don't understand the difference because they're moving from the big cities or in Kitchener-Waterloo into our communities, and they just think that the fire department's sitting there waiting to go out on a call like they were used to where they used to live. Environmental sustainability and innovation is we're going to look at sustainability practices, including green building designs for fire stations and the adoption of eco-friendly equipment to reduce the environmental footprint of the fire service. So some of the things that we're even currently looking at right now is getting away from some of our gas-powered equipment that we've had for numerous years and looking at the e-technology, the battery-operated stuff, because the efficiency is there comparable to what we had with the gas. They're going to look at training and professional development just to make sure we're focusing on where we need to do. Improving leadership, training methods, infrastructure, overall training, and environmental legislative compliance. With fire prevention and public education and fire investigation, they're going to look at making sure our programs are in line with the community needs and circumstances and the legislative compliance. And then they're going to provide us with a comprehensive plan. Like I said, it's not just a piece of paper that goes on the desk to look at. This is something that we're going to move forward with clear timelines, milestones, and performance metrics for implementing these recommendations. So with that, we're going to move to a little bit of an overview on the Lumex Group. So the Lumex Group is a North American group of companies that provide strategic, operational, and tactical services for clients across Canada and the United States. Their clients include municipalities, fire departments, emergency responders, airports, aerospace industry, institutions, private industries, governments, First Nations. As a company, they inspire positive change to help communities and organizations become safer. With that, the Lumix Group was founded in 2009 in Peterborough, Ontario, and they currently have over 100 employees across North America. So the group we're dealing with is their Response and Readiness Division. That group works mostly remotely, which is because of the nature of the business, but their project advisor, who we will be dealing with, is actually based in Waterloo region. He lives in Baden, so he's local. He can get here if we need to consult with them to come to council or do whatever. And another person that's part of the project as the project lead is based in Newmarket, Ontario. So they're pretty close to be able to get here within 2.5 hours to do something, the meeting for us. As part of, so the last little bit is the consultant's process. So the process that the consultant's going to follow is meeting with the fire chief, engagement with council, and engagement with senior management, which is the senior management of the fire department, stakeholder engagement, site visits to fire stations in the community, and then do a final presentation to council. So the engagement within council, the reason for it is Woolwich's councillors are stakeholders in the project. It is essential for them to understand the scope of the fire master plan as well as how the project will unfold. So during the initial meeting with council, the Lumix group will explain the project scope, goals, and methodology, and the Lumix group will then invite councillors to give ask preliminary questions about the project and its deliverables. So they're going to come here and engage with you guys as a group, or individually, depending on how they do it, so that you understand the whole process, and you're going to be part of the process all the way through. The engagement with senior management team is a scheduled engagement sessions with the fire department's leadership group and the team stakeholders within the fire department. Stakeholder engagement, so they have two different portions to this. There's an internal consultation, and this is with stakeholders within the fire department and the Township of Woolwich, such as this, all my volunteers, administrative staff, and relevant municipal staff members. So that'll be some of the ones we're going to make sure that we talk to. So it'll be Jared's group, because we're infecting them by looking at all our fire protection stuff, asset management, finance with budgeting, because that's how we need to be moving forward. And even clerks, because we're going to be potentially altering some of our municipal bylaws, especially our one for ourselves. And the public consultation is still to be determined how it's going to be done, but it'll be sessions including conducting consultations with the general public. They'll either take place online or actually public meetings in the different communities where stakeholders are required. Visits to the fire stations in the community, it's pretty self-explanatory. They want to go and look at all our fire halls, look at our communities, make sure that they're going to be able to look at us from a complete lens and make sure that we are properly prepared and they have all the information that they need to make this happen for us. And the final presentation will come to council when they're completed. They'll do a presentation to council with the recommendations in that fire plan. So with that, is there any questions on the whole process that they're going to be doing?
Thanks, Chief Otis. Just quickly, when do you expect the final presentation, or what's the timeline for the
We're
process?
looking at, I'm going to say, because the RFP has been issued, I haven't heard back from them yet as the initial consultation with us, but they're looking in the 4 to 6 months category. So we could be getting it late summer, early fall.
Thank you. Questions? I guess we're looking forward to seeing the report and the process over the next few months.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, that moves us on to reporting, Mayor's report on regional matters.
Mm, I'm looking at the decisions that matter, which was issued on the 28th of January. So that was our last meeting. And the last item there is investing in safer roads. And so they're still working on a plan for road safety with the loss of the automated speed enforcement. We had a plan to use funds that were generated there for a number of safe roads initiatives. So they're sort of rethinking what we can do, how we can maybe we do have a reserve there now from the speed enforcement that happened, but how we can sustain that. So that's one thing. And today we talked a little bit about waste collection and just reminding people that March 1st or thereabouts is the new system of waste collection. And there's 2 apps. One is WasteWiz that you may have used before. That's from the Regional Waterloo site, and you can go in there and it'll give you all kinds of information on what to do and when. And then there's Circular Materials that does the recycling, and they've got an app as well that you can go in and ask questions and that you need. So the scheduling will change as well.
Okay, thanks. Any questions on that? Not seeing any. Oh, Councillor Bryant.
Just one quick question. Are they still collecting data from the speed cameras, or have they stopped gathering the data for whatever use that they may want to do with it?
They were collecting for a while. I don't know if they are still or not.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any council reports or updates? Not seeing any outstanding activity lists. Any comments? Nothing important information package. No public notices. This brings us to the end of our regular meeting of council. Looking for one motion to adjourn. Councillor Grant. Councillor Bryant, all in favor? We are adjourned. On behalf of council, thank you to everybody who participated in person or online tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Thanks.